Okay, so we're gonna get started with your foundation for your weaving. You've already warped your loom. You're gonna need a piece of cardstock or cardboard. We are going to weave this into the base of our loom down here so that when you weave, you have something to push your yarn against that is straight and so that your piece is level. So we're gonna weave that in, and then we're gonna do a few foundational woven rows here. The yarn that you use for that, it doesn't matter what it is, it's not gonna be seen, it's gonna be under your raya knots. Of course, I wouldn't pick something black if I'm doing, you know, a lighter color weaving. And then you'll need a weaving needle, and if you're using it, you don't need to, a weaving comb. So the first thing we're gonna do with this cardstock is we're gonna weave it into our warp strings, and we're gonna do this doing just what's called a plain weave, which is a weave you're going to, it's like the most common type of way of weaving that you'll see. So all I'm doing is taking this cardstock and I'm going over one warp string and under the next. I'm gonna do this all the way across the loom. It doesn't matter if you start over or under, as long as you're alternating. So whether you do this with your cardstock or cardboard or yarn, this is called a plain or tabby weave. And again, it's the kind of the most simple, common stitch. So it'll be fun once we start doing it with yarn. Another reason why this is important to have at the bottom of your project is you want to make sure you have enough warp string at the bottom of your project when you go to take it off the loom, because you'll need a little bit of extra warp string down here so you can knot and tie off your piece. Okay, so that is woven in to the warp strings. I'm gonna push it all the way down again. So I have something to push against. When you have the yarn on here, it'll kind of stop. It's nice and level, so that I'll have a nice level piece. Okay. And then I'm gonna take my yarn. We're gonna do a few rows, again, that will be under the raya knots. So I'm just gonna take like, I don't know, 4 or 5 lengths of my loom with my warp string. Now this is a weaving needle. I learned not using one of these. You can certainly just use your hands. But they do make it a little easier. Let's see if I can get this thick yarn through. And then you just want to knot it onto your needle if you're using one. Okay, so you start with your needle, and we are going to do just this first row is going to be a plain stitch or a tabby. So you can start over or under, it doesn't matter. I'm going to start over on the bottom right of my loom. I'm going to go over the first warp string, under the next, over the next, under the next, so on and so forth. Let me see here if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Once you get the hang of this, you can go pretty quick. And then I'm going to pull, you know, most of my string through here, and then keep going until you are all the way through. Sometimes it's a little hard to get the knot through for a sec. Now you want to pull your yarn all the way through, and you want to leave a good sized tail at the end, and this can just hang out the side. Now, this applies to all of your stitches that you'll do. When you pull the yarn down, you want to leave a bubble like this. And then once you have your arch or your bubble, you can then come in the middle and push down your yarn. The reason why you want that arc or that bubble is if you just pull it straight and pull it tight, if you do that over and over again as you're weaving, your project won't keep these straight outer edges. It'll become too tight and your weaving will end up with like an hourglass shape. If you do the bubble or the arc and then push it down, it leaves enough slack in your yarn so that it won't pull in the sides. Okay, so that was your first weaving row. That was the plain stitch. Now I'm going to teach you the twining stitch. Now this stitch is really nice to do at the very bottom of your weaving as a foundation. The twining stitch is a really good secure stitch that kind of cements the warp strings at even distances apart and doesn't let them be pulled too tight so that your weaving ends up really uniform. So you are going to take your weaving needle and you are going to go under. So anywhere where there are warp strings with the yarn going over the warp string, so here, 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 you are going to go under the warp string, under the yarn, but then back up before the next warp string. So I'm going under here, pulling all my yarn through. I kind of like to hang on to this warp string so I'm not pulling it too tight like this, but I am pulling my yarn through. Then I'm going to come in again and go to the next one that has the yarn over the warp string, and I'm going to go under the warp string, under the yarn, up and through. Pull it all the way through. And then keep going all the way across. So you've already learned 2 stitches, the plain weave and the twining stitch. So again, you want to get that piece of cardboard in so you have something to weave against. Then you want to do a plain weave just once across so you have something to work with. Then you do the twining stitch, which interacts with that first row of plain weave. And then all you will do is do a couple more rows of plain weave on top of this twining weave. And then you will be ready to move on to the next step of your project, which will be adding the fringe or the raya knots to your project. Now, when you are, and I'll show you this when I do my next plain row, when you are making that arch or bubble so that your weaving isn't pulled too tight and warped, You can use like a weaving comb like this. They're really fun to use, actually. I did not learn using a weaving comb. It's not totally necessary, but it's really nice to have. It's really nice to kind of uniformly be able to push down your yarn. And once I've started using one, I love using it and I don't want to go back to not using it. But again, not 100% necessary. If you don't have one, you can literally use a wide tooth comb that you would use on your hair. You can also try using a fork, although those are pretty narrow. Or if, like I showed you earlier, you can just use your fingers. All right, we're almost to the end here. I want to make sure I'm pulling this too. Looks really good. Again, it's cementing those warp strings into place. Okay, so that is the twining stitch. Now, to move on to my next row of just plain weave, I'm noticing that my yarn here is going under the last warp string. So to continue, I want to go over the last warp string, and I'm just going to go over the last warp string, under the next, over, under, all the way across. Okay, now I'm gonna create that. See, it's already, if you pull too hard, it's already distorting the edges of your weaving. You can always easily fix that and kind of pull apart on your warp strings a little bit. But what I'm gonna do is form that nice bubble. And then if you were to use a weaving comb, you could just do this kind of thing. I always like to go down, push down on the bubble or arc right in the middle to just evenly distribute the yarn. Okay, and then since I went under on this side, at the very end, I'm gonna go over this warp string so that the plain weave alternates with the row under it. What's so nice about weaving is you can easily undo things and your project can be fixed if you make a mistake. I've all the time been not paying attention and I go under instead of over, and you can just take it out and fix it. So here I am using my fingers, pushing down on the bubble in the middle, and then down to the side. So as you can see, the weaving comb isn't like 100% necessary, but it is really nice to just come in and more uniformly push down a little bit. Okay. So to end this portion, you just cut off your yarn. You want to leave a little tail. And then because this yarn won't be seen, you can just weave it a little bit. This is how you weave without a weaving needle, and then kind of just tuck it in the back like that. And then this piece, I'm just gonna kind of bring it to the back here, and I'm gonna show you at the end when you finish your weaving, you'll have all kinds of pieces hanging off the back, and I'll teach you how to weave those in and clean up the back of your weaving. But this is such a good foundation for a weaving project. The next step will be adding your fringe hanging down from your project, so this won't be seen. All right, that's it.